Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fort Verticals podcast, episode 96. This is the pre-show. We will get started here in a few minutes at around, 2:18 in the afternoon Eastern time. We'll get started at 2:20. Hopefully, hopefully everyone's having a good day. Of course, we are high atop Jacksonville, a steamy Jacksonville, Florida today. I think the temperature hit 90 degrees today as I check the phone, I guess. Technically, this is an Josh, since my name is Josh. 91 degrees out. It's going to be near about 100, really, for the next 7 days or so. Then it'll finally kind of cool off a little bit. But they got a big show for you guys today. A lot of things to cover. College ball news. The Superman trailer came out yesterday. The Ironheart trailer came out yesterday. A lot of things to talk about, both on the sports side and the also Marvel, I guess, the DC Star Wars side as well. So there's a lot of things to cover, so hopefully everyone will join us to hop on in. We are live right now. Put the link out on Twitter, so we'll give some folks some time to come in here and join us. We'll start here in about a minute or so. By the way, if you're new here, this is the pre-show. This is only for YouTube only. This is not in the podcast feed. So if you are listening to the podcast feed after this, to replay, you will not hear this. This will just be YouTube only. And if you're watching on YouTube, move the slider just a little bit. We are about to start here in a couple seconds, any moment now. But yeah, if you're new here, just be aware on the YouTube side of things, you have the pre-show. On the podcast feed, there's no pre-show. So with now being 2:20, we will start the show in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Fort Verticals podcast, episode 96. 4 episodes away from episode 100. Can't wait. We've been doing this for almost a year now, and we're getting so close. So I think we will reach it not this week, but next week, which will be Memorial Day weekend, I think, or Memorial Day week after that, somewhere around then. So how about that? Just lines up perfectly. But got a loaded show today. High atop a steamy Jacksonville, Florida. It's may as well be summer now. We touched 90 today. We're gonna be close to 100 this weekend, and then it's we're gonna taper off a little bit. The temperatures is looking at the extended forecast. But speaking of the weather, very interesting severe weather situation going up way north of us in the Midwest, like Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois. Today, and then there's more really the rest of the next couple days or so, this week and into next week. So a very active weather pattern returning, if you will, to the midsection of the country. But here in Florida, gonna be quiet for a while. No afternoon storms or nothing. It's just a lot of heat, a lot of warmth. Got a little show for today. Of course, we're not a weather podcast, but we talk about the weather when we can. Head coaches under pressure. Sort of a new, I guess, mini series, if you will be starting here over the next couple of shows. Doing the SEC, coaches under pressure. Got a USC record projection for 2025, and a lot of other stories in between. Of course, the Superman trailer came out. A new article that, a new report has came out about some division going on at Lucasfilm regarding Star Wars. No surprise, as a lot of other folks have been reporting on this for like 2 months now, that this has been happening. And the Buccaneers schedule got released yesterday officially, although some of it was leaked, and there's a story to that I'll talk about later. But and of course, and we'll end the show with Q&A properly as we usually do. So if you're new here, a couple things here need you guys to do before we get started. Number one, make sure you subscribe. It's our asking, nothing happens. I won't send you guys mail or emails or come to your house or wherever you live, knock on the door and say, hey, sign up here, give me some money. This show's not behind a paywall. I don't have a Patreon page or anything like that. This is completely free. All of this information and access is available to you guys. I'm making it sound like I'm giving you guys exclusive stuff. It's really not. It's just access to me talking to you guys. Us and the NFL, what we have in common, as I figured out, we're both going to be streaming on YouTube. NFL, handshake emoji, putting their Friday night opening game on YouTube for free. No, you don't have to pay for anything. It's not behind a paywall or anything. You just go on YouTube and search whoever's playing that night. I forgot. But, you can go on there and watch the game for free, just like us. You can watch this show for free. But also make sure to follow us on Twitter and on the podcast feed on Spotify. So that's all I'm asking you guys. I'm not asking you guys to donate any money. No, I'm none of that. I would hopefully never ask you guys for that, but probably never. But yeah, got a big show for you guys today. A lot of things to talk about, so we have a loaded show. So this will definitely be over an hour. The last couple of shows have not been over an hour. This one definitely gonna be over an hour. So just be prepared for what is coming, if you will. Head coaches under pressure. Again, little series we started. We did this last year. We did a lot of coaches who were under pressure, mostly first year. I think we're evolving this into current coaches and new coaches as well when it's necessary. But yeah, a couple of coaches here. We're starting out in the SEC. We'll move on to like the ACC and then move up north and spread out, if you will. But in the SEC, there's a few coaches under pressure. Now, when I'm talking about pressure, I'm not necessarily talking about job security. Now, I'm not going to say specifically which guys have job security in terms of they're going to get fired. You can probably guess which ones on this list, or on any of these lists we do over the next couple of shows, but this is just a generalization. Which coaches are sort of, there's some urgency to win now versus winning later. And I think there's a lot of these guys on this list have that. Again, not necessarily going to get fired, just some concern, worry for other coaches. Well, some coaches have more worry into job security, others not so much, but I'm not going to really specify which one or specifically say which ones in these segments, but I think you guys can probably figure out who's who. First one, here's Billy Napier. This one's obvious. He sort of saved his job last year. They bring in DJ Lagway. He's tied to DJ Lagway. There's a lot of pressure at Florida, right? New president, a lot of hope, but also cautious optimism because a lot of it is surrounding DJ Lagway and his health. God forbid doesn't get hurt again. Their schedule, SEC-wise, same as last year, just the venues changed. So, for example, you play A&M, you play the Texas A&M at home. You go to College Station this year, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. There are going to be a lot of tough games, a lot of emotional games. But I think if we look at their schedule, of course, we'll eventually do a proper Florida record projection at some point. Of course we will. I think you guys will come to realize Florida may actually have a lot of opportunities to do some big things. For example, they get Texas at their place, and they played them at Austin last year. Now they come to Gainesville. That's one of those games where it's a golden opportunity to get Billy Napier a big win, which he hasn't really had many. I mean, I guess the Ole Miss win last year. So Billy Napier, for a lot of reasons, he's on there. Kellen DeBoer is on here. And Kellen DeBoer is not going anywhere, but I think last year for a lot of Bama fans, and this was expected, right? He's on Nick Saban, and of course, a lot of people were theorizing last year, if things go off the rails, could they, fire Kellen DeBoer, or if they have, buyer remorse on him, and they go bring in Nick Saban. That was a theory going around. You bring back Nick Saban as an interim. That didn't happen last year. Yes, did they lose in ways that you, as a Bama fan, if you were like me who grew up during the Saban era, not used to seeing Bama losing to Oklahoma by 17 points or so, or 21 points. Not used to seeing Vanderbilt compete with the number one team in the country. You're not used to seeing Michigan a team like Michigan beating them in the bowl game. All that stuff is understandable to be upset by. It's understandable to be disappointed, and based on what you had last year with Jalen Milroe and the aura of Kellen DeBoer when he did it at Washington and Fresno State and Sioux Falls, I get it. It was jarring last year. Doesn't mean it has to be like that forever. And I think this year they bring back Ryan Williams. They have the best wide receiver room in the SEC for sure up there in the country. I know Ohio State has a lot to say about that. But I think this year for Kellen DeBoer and company, with Ty Simpson coming in, of course, they have Kellen Russell for the future. I'm not, out of all these guys on this list, I would just say I'm least concerned about him because I think he has all the tools. And, you bring in Ryan Grubb, you sort of not fully reboot your coaching staff, but you kind of do. Bring in Ryan Grubb. I feel pretty good about Kellen DeBoer and Bama this year. I'm not too concerned. Yes, is there pressure? Of course there is. If they go 9-3 again this year or worse, I'm not going to say the world's going to end, but I think folks in Tuscaloosa, Alabaster, Alabama, Pickensville, Hamilton, Alabama, be a lot of pissed off folks for sure. A lot of folks will not be happy. Probably a lot of TVs broken. But outside of them sliding back even further, I don't think that's going to happen. I guess that's a spoiler from when we get to the record projection, but I feel pretty good about Kellen DeBoer and Bama. I'm not concerned. I'm just interested in what the season will look like. What changes have they made during the spring, and what they'll do eventually in fall camp? What is that going to eventually translate into come when they play Florida State, week 1 on the road. So sticking in the state of Alabama, hopping on, 359 or 259, or Interstate 59. Going to Birmingham, hop off, go on 65, hop on 85. Go to Lee County, Alabama, Auburn, Alabama, Hugh Freeze. There is a lot of concern here. I would be lying to you if I said there wasn't. They have not had a winning season in this decade, which is insane to say, but they have not since, well, actually, no, technically they did, but that was 2020. But in terms of a full season, like a full 12-game regular season, they've not had a winning season this decade. They just haven't, and that's not really the Auburn standard, right? That's not what most of you growing up like me. We've seen Auburn have bad years, 2008, 2012. The Brian Harson's sort of half second year, half final year, whatever you want to call it, the end of his time there. Those are bad seasons, but we haven't seen Auburn consecutively have just horrible season after horrible season. Well, they've had that for a couple of years now. Now, Hugh Freeze came there. Unfortunately, they've had a lot of embarrassing losses in New Mexico State a couple of years ago. They have done well recruiting. I will give them a lot of credit for that. They have improved recruiting. They're for example, their blue chip ratio, which was dangling by a thread during the Harsin years, and they almost fell out, which is insane to think about. Hugh Freeze sort of rounding it back in a little bit, sort of reeling it back in. Got close to the the lava there, if you're going to use a volcano metaphor. But he is saving them from a recruiting standpoint. Talent-wise, it's gotten a lot better. Results on the field just aren't good enough. I will admit that. They're not. Losing to New Mexico State, losing to Cal last year, losing to Arkansas, losing a lot of games that you would imagine Auburn being somewhat either equal to in town or a little bit better than. Now, they did improve, if you will, I guess, in quarterback Jackson Arnold. Cam Coleman, second year, he was up there with guys like Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith. He kind of gets forgotten because those two had it's like the SpongeBob meme where, Squidward is in his house and he's Patrick and SpongeBob having fun. Squidward is Cam Coleman. Like, Cam Coleman is, I kind of feel bad for him that he was stuck on a shitty offense last year. Hopefully that's not the case this year. You're hoping for Auburn fan that he improves, the offense improves. It's not a guarantee, but you look at their schedule. They face Baylor on a Thursday night. The easiest thing, again, like I've been mentioning to you guys, I think Baylor, I haven't checked lately, but I believe they will probably be the favorite at some point. As we get closer, I'd imagine that line will probably move. But yeah, a lot of pressure for Hugh Freeze and Auburn this year. There certainly is. And again, I'm not saying whether or not he should be fired or not. That's up to the administration. But there's pressure there. There's also pressure in Baton Rouge, Louisiana with Brian Kelly. Now, this one's a little bit complicated for me because I think Brian Kelly has done an okay job there. He's done fine. Everyone can laugh at his track record saying, oh, he's made it to the playoff. He hasn't won anything. Well, and people say that about people. It's the same talking points like Lincoln Riley and, James Franklin. Brian Kelly's in that same, I guess, stratosphere. But, Brian Kelly's been around for like even longer than I have. He's been around for college football for over 30 years. Sure, there's pressure here, a lot of concern. Of course, last year, or actually a couple years ago, wasting Jane Daniels. You had Gary Nussmeier have a good year last year of defense, while, yes, you brought in, guys like Blake Baker and Kevin Peoples, and you would imagine it getting a little bit better defensively. It didn't last year. They whiffed in the portal. They lose Bryce Underwood to Michigan. It's been sort of a very toxic time down there. But on the flip side, they've done well in recruiting outside of Bryce Underwood, and they've also improved well in the portal. Transfer window this past December, they've actually improved and actually sort of flexed their muscles in the NIL world where they were not previously. So that's good. If there's success to be had, there we celebrate it, but there's not been a whole lot on the field, which is insane to think about because remember Brian Kelly in his first year, a lot of people forget this. He beat Alabama. He made it to the SEC championship game. And now I'm sure you can say, "Whoa, the SEC West was weak that year." And sure, you can make that argument, but he still did it. That doesn't, just because the SEC West was a bit of a garbage can, that doesn't exist anymore. That season's not real. Okay, guess we're using, Dr. Strange logic, right? Use that spell from No Way Home, and he, erasing everyone's memory of LSU football in 2022, where that was a really good team. So this last one here, kind of an interesting, it's Mark Stoops. Now, this is the one I really don't know why people are putting him on here. I've seen a lot of folks. I was listening to an interview, by the way, with Bordeaux. the College Bowl 25 guy. Now, this was obviously pre-recorded because he was still living in Florida. Now he's since moved. He was on with that Florida State fullback, Freddie Stevenson, on his podcast earlier. I think that's who it was. Yeah, it was him. And Bordeaux was asked about Kentucky football because he's a UK fan for football. And kind of interesting how he sort of worded it like he was, the sort of the vibe I was getting is that he wasn't happy. And that's sort of the same sentiment I've gotten from a lot of Kentucky fans I've seen on Twitter and YouTube and the comment sections of Josh Payton cover 3. Well, I understand you're frustrated, right? Mark Stoops, much like James Franklin at Vanderbilt, he's going to get a statue there, regardless of how it ends. Either he leaves, he goes somewhere else. Like, for example, the theory for a long time has been him going to Iowa whenever Kirk Ferentz retires because he's alumni, gets fired or whatever. I would imagine, and that's something I echo off of Bud Elliott from Cover 3, that the second Mark Stoops leaves, or however it happens, Kentucky football going to bowl games or winning 11 games or 10 wins or being ranked, myself and a lot of others will probably never see that again for most of our lifetime. They'll be pretty surprised if we ever see that again after however Mark Stoops would potentially leave or him exiting. But I mean, just look at what he's done there. He's energized Kentucky football, and sort of the job there, if you will, if you look at it from a higher perspective, is the job at Kentucky is to make the performance entertainable, or at least make the performance on the field. Yeah, I guess make it entertaining. Get fans in the stands and sell tickets and everything, and keeping people occupied before basketball. He's done that. He's done outside of his first couple of years, he has done that. He has fully got people invested there. And sure, he's had some big wins, like beating Ole Miss a couple years ago, beating Florida a few times. That's great. And I think for Kentucky fans, after seeing this success, I think Josh Pate's old adage of the consequences of success kind of applies here with Kentucky and Mark Stoops. They have basically, and this is from my observation, they have sort of convinced themselves, 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, that's normal for Kentucky. Well, it's not. Historically, that is the exception to the rule, which is Kentucky football is just a distraction until basketball. Which is nothing wrong with that. That's just who they are. I'm not trying to be mean, but that's just who they have been and who they are. So that's why I think that Mark Stoops' hate is a little bit unwarranted, because he's doing what he can do there. They don't have the resources for football. They don't have the facilities. They don't have the NIL money for that. They don't have the funding. They don't have the fan interest. And it sucks for those of you who do care, but it is what it is. That's why I have it on my on my notes here. I have a star next because I was considering not putting him on here, but we don't talk a lot of Kentucky football, so I was like, may as well put it on here. But Matt coaches in the SEC, under most pressure. You can fit more on here. Like, I was going to put Mike Yoko on here or Josh Heupel, but they're all safe. I think most of those guys, I guess maybe Sam Pittman, but Arkansas football is sort of a very unique thing, like Kentucky, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Mississippi State. I guess Mississippi State could have, Jeff Lebby could have been on here, but I didn't because I don't know. That's a very, very tough job. There's not a lot of major expectations there, but oh well. But yeah, coaches under pressure in the SEC. We'll do this for the ACC, I think, next week, I believe, next Monday, or however we'll do the first show next week, which I will let you guys know on that. But yes, there might be a scheduling issue next week, so I'll let you guys know on Twitter what our plans are. But before we move on to the next little topic here, I'll get some water. We'll do playoff expansion update, USC team record projection, and then some other stuff not really related to college football after. So this is a little update here, which is a little bit old. We haven't talked about it yet, which is the playoff expansion update. There's been a growing consensus around a lot of the reporters and a lot of the meetings that the playoff committee has had, a lot of the people who are a part of that. The growing consensus is that there is going to be a course expansion, because remember, the current format, the way it's currently structured, is expiring at the end of this year. It's over with. So this is, after the final playoff rankings come out on Selection Sunday this year, school's out. Rules are going to change again, which is insane to think about. But yes, it was only a 2-year deal. I think a lot of folks didn't realize that, but I think now you think you know. But yeah, there's growing consensus for 16-team playoff. Most of you know of me and guys like Josh Pate. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it. But we deal with it. It is what it is. I mean, if they can structure it properly and not having the stupid auto bid thing, or at least do it correctly, and at least in a way that doesn't sound stupid, I'm okay with it. Hopefully there's structure to it. Hopefully there's actual criteria. Hopefully they actually honor and respect strength of schedule properly, like they haven't done the past couple of years. And I guess I haven't really addressed this yet. I don't think I have yet, but there's a report that came out, I believe it was from Heather Dinich over at ESPN, about sort of one of the potential criteria for this, the future playoffs is TV ratings. And I didn't really give this much thought because I was like, oh, okay, that's just like a throwaway line. That's probably just a joke, which I still think it kind of is. I personally do not believe TV ratings should be a part of this. I think that's personally, I don't think fans should really care about that. Sort of like, fans care about the box office performances of movies or TV ratings. It's like, it's cool to talk about, but realistically, you shouldn't care about it. But I know a lot of you do care about it. But, this is probably going to happen. There's a good consensus that this will go to 16. And for people like me, of course, it's clear they're not going to decrease the size of this. They're going to continue to increase it. It's like the old adage of when you renovate a building, you don't destroy the building. You don't shave off the building, you make it bigger. And unfortunately, at the playoff, that same rules apply here. You don't shave off floors of a building when you're renovating it. You just put more floors on it, or add more things to it, and they're doing that. So look, I'm gonna stop complaining about it. It is what it is. I get it, but just please have a better structure and actually honor certain things and don't. I just do wish they do this properly. I would much rather it not be what it was this past year, where it's like, it's the actual playoff rankings don't reflect the actual seeding. It's like I literally had to learn this from playing the College Football 25 video games. I didn't realize that before, that the actual listing of the teams on that stupid show ESPN does every single freaking Tuesday, which half of the main personalities don't do anymore. Like Kirk, he stopped doing it a long time ago. Those listing of rankings you see every single week starting in November, that's not the seeding. That's just them listing the teams. They only choose the 5 highest ranked conference champs, and they get the first round buys. So at least that's the way it's going to go this year as well, and then they'll change. Of course, there's been rumblings of them changing the format. We'll see what happens with that. At least my defense of that, or at least why they shouldn't change it, it's like we're going to be changing anyway next year, so what's the deal with it? But anyway, that's the little update there on the playoff expansion realm of things. Just is what it is. They're probably going to be expanding it. Of course, we've been talking about this for a long time. A lot of Josh Pace's been talking about this for half a decade now, almost 5 years now, or even before that he was in Columbus. But yeah, it sucks. I am not happy that this is happening, but is what it is. It's all I get. It's all for the dollar. It's all for the money. 2025 team record projections continue with USC. They're on deck. Of course, we've been doing this for the past few weeks. A couple weeks now. We've done multiple teams already. We're planning on doing a whole bunch of teams at some point. We'll continue to knock them out. But USC is next year. Is this the first Big Ten team? Yeah, I think it is. How about that? Well, second, actually. We did Washington last week, but second Big Ten team. Our West Coast team, how about that? West Coast focused start here of the Big Ten for our record projection series. Sort of how we do this. Actually, I forgot to add something in here. So forgot to add in the win total from FanDuel, but sort of as I'm how this sort of goes, if you will, as I'm adding this little piece of information in. Latest happens, we use the FanDuel number. Of course, FanDuel's not a sponsor of the show. We just use them because they're pretty reliable. Let's see here, add this in. We'll be behind the scenes on the show live. So we have their over-under win total for USC from FanDuel. We do their best case scenario, worst case, most reasonable. Take a look at their schedule and diagnose it. See what it looks like. So for USC, of course, we'll do kind of a recap of what happened last year and what they have this year. Last year, defensive overhaul, new quarterback of Miller Moss. What happened last year? A lot of some highs and lows, right? The high being beating LSU, and then low was losing to Maryland on the road. Not good. So you let Miller Moss go. All of a sudden, he's getting a lot of attention at Louisville. You have Jaden Maeva, who was the transfer from UNLV, not the guy who left last year in the middle of the year. It's a different guy. He's now probably your starter. So, okay. They have, second year under D'Anton Land. You would imagine the defense, which was good last year, which is definitely the more brighter spot than the offense. I would imagine the offense will not be as bad as it was last year. Their over under win total is 7.5. That's quite good, given sort of the trajectory at least people think of USC being. But after watching Josh Pate's video with his interview with the GM and Lincoln Riley out there when he went out there a couple weeks ago, it feels not like Florida last year. And I can't agree with Josh after watching that video. It's like, yeah, it feels like when he went to Gainesville last year, and Horsell was there this week. Sort of has the same vibe where it's like, yes, things were where they were last year, but there is a sense of we think we're confident. There's a sense of confidence, a lot more. I'm not hype, but just a air of we feel like we can be a lot better than people think. It's sort of that underdog mentality, us against the world. I don't know if it's like exactly like Clemson was a couple back in the 2010s or mid to late 2010s, but sort of I guess kind of similar. But over under win total is 7.5. Now their schedule quite not that challenging for the first couple of weeks actually. So they get Missouri State, who is by the way a FBS team, so they will be in College Bowl 26. Missouri State, Georgia Southern. Hey, we got Clay Helton's coming back to the Coliseum. How about that? Hey, how about that? The Clay Helton return game. That's I just thought of that. Yeah, you'll be traveling back to Los Angeles playing against USC. So he'll be come back to town. So after that, conference play starts with Purdue and Michigan State. The easiest two Big Ten games you could pick outside of Maryland and Maryland and Wisconsin. So kudos for them for getting that. Now, unfortunately, it gets real in a hurry. Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame on the road, knock on. Nebraska, you get Northwestern at home, so that's good. Iowa, same. Oregon, and then UCLA. So there's a lot of workable games, a lot of games that you would be sort of equal to in talent or a little bit better than. Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, Iowa to a certain extent. So those are games I think if you're USC, I would imagine you'd be favored in, right? I would be a little bit surprised if you're not. I would imagine you'd be favored in a lot of those. It also includes UCLA. So those games, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of favorable games. There's really only 4 or 3 games I really don't feel good about their chances, and that would be the Illinois game, Michigan, Notre Dame, Nebraska, and Oregon. So that's 5 or 4. It's based on that schedule, and there's also bye weeks in between then. I think there's 2 again of this year. Haven't necessarily gotten used to or I've fully looked into how it works. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page, which does not take into account bye weeks, but I'm assuming there's at least 1 or 2 in here, much like last year. But either way, still quite a favorable beginning of the schedule here for them. I'm not, especially the first couple of weeks, until September 27th on the road in Champaign, Illinois. You should be 4-0 going to that game. I'll be a little bit stunned if you're weren't. So, based on that, again, you have second year under D'Anton Land. The offense should be getting a lot better. I think the best case scenario for them is 9-3. Based on that schedule, I think there is a avenue for that to happen. Now, of course, you may be asking yourself, well, which games are you predicting them to probably lose? If I just to guess here, probably Notre Dame, Nebraska, Oregon. If you were to guess, probably those would be those, or I guess here for Nebraska or Illinois, but some combination of those 3, 3 losses out of those 4 teams I just mentioned. But they play Michigan, by the way, on October 11th. That's a game I feel pretty good about them winning. That's an East Coast team or somewhat East Coast team traveling over. It's a true freshman quarterback on the road. I always feel good about that. I think USC defensively should be pretty good again with Lynn being there his second year. So with a lot of their tougher games, on the road and getting, avoiding Ohio State, avoiding Penn State, and getting Michigan at home, that helps. Now, of course, also sucks you have Notre Dame too, but I think there's an avenue here where they could, if everything sort of comes together and the defense plays well in that offense, especially with Jen Maeva taking over, or if it's the Longstreet kid or whoever, I think 9-3 is not impossible to think here. That's kind of feel that way. Now, the worst case scenario, unfortunately, is 6-6, and that's considering you have sort of half year, right? you have a lot of relatively easy games, and unfortunately, you do have a lot of games that are going to be either a coin flip or you're going to be dogs in. So, unfortunately, that's the worst case scenario here. Of course, we're not really predicting injuries and stuff, but it also could be a factor. But I think here, I'm going on a limb here. It's pretty bold. I think they're most reasonable. The same the same as their best case. I think 9-3 is pretty reasonable here. Again, I like the schedule, how it sets up. Your big games are mostly on the road. You avoid Ohio State, you avoid Penn State, you get Michigan at home. You can maybe get Illinois early on the road, but we'll see. But yeah, I feel kind of good here for USC. Again, after listening to Pate's interview with Lincoln Riley and other interviews he's done with them, thinking about it, looking at their schedule, I think a 9-3 best case scenario is not bad. Same as their most reasonable. I think those two. I think the best case scenario here is their most reasonable. So again, if you're new here, that can happen sometimes where their best case is literally their most reasonable scenario because it just is their best case. But a lot of times, most of the time, is usually a different record. But yeah, I think 9-3 is their best case scenario is actually pretty reasonable here. So I feel good about USC, and they do that. Then them going that way, and they have that record. That should be enough to get them to the college football playoff. I'd imagine. We'll see. What me going for here? About 30 minutes. I'm going to get some more water here. We'll have Superman trailer. Got thoughts on that. Some other stuff talking about. Of course, we get into Q&A. So I'm going to get some water real quick here in the old water jug. Actually, don't get another sip of that. And again, I guess as we're sort of taking a little pause here, if you are new here, make sure, again, you subscribe to the channel, like the videos. For watching us in the replay, same. Kind of insane to think about. We're getting close to 100 episodes. That's quite insane that we're getting pretty close. But yeah, make sure you subscribe, podcast feed, YouTube, follow me on Twitter, as usual stuff. So James Gunn's Superman trailer came out yesterday. I've had mixed thoughts on this, mostly positive, though I do understand there's been a lot of negativity and a lot of things writing on this one, which makes sense, right? You know, the reports that came out last month about, Warner Bros. Was worried about, this movie being sort of dictating their future as a studio, which is insane to think about, but sort of reflects the current state of that studio. You have had, a lot of the controversy surrounding James Gunn and sort of the way he conducts himself on social media, and a lot of the, the flip-flopping on certain things, like announcing things that were never been announced publicly, and it just sort of, it kind of does feel like we're still stuck in the old, the old Zack Snyder era of DC, where they announced a lot of movies, but they never making them, or never actually made a lot of progress on them. That's what I'm trying to say. But of course, on top of that, you have the way the trailers and the way the footage has been looking, like the VFX stuff, and the fact that there's been very little dialogue, and that's got a lot of people sort of worried about it. Well, James Gunn decided to release a new trailer. It comes out, and like I mentioned on Twitter, I kind of fit in the same area as Josh over at Den of Nerds. That there's a lot of good things in here. I'm actually more positive about it now after watching it again, but still, there's a lot of negatives, and I kind of agree with him, and also Robert Meyer Burnett to a certain extent. And when I get to what I agree with them, how I'm going to get to what they sort of their issue that I agree with here in just a second. But there's a lot of things I like on here. I think the VFX looks a lot better. The flying shots look a lot better. Some of the dialogue, although some of it I don't like, some of it I do like. Finally starting to hear it. Again, visually it looks good. I think a lot of it's been certainly cleaned up. Like, for example, the kaiju that Superman's facing, I think that's towards the beginning of the movie, I think. Looks fine. A lot of the VFX shots for the Green Lantern, Guy Garner, looks a lot better than it looked previously. So visually it's a lot better. For some of the dialogue, it's better. But I think that's the main issue is really two. One, the dialogue is a typical James Gunn dialogue. I think the one that I'm sort of agree with, and I agree with this a lot with Josh and Robert Meyer Burnett, is that the opening part of the trailer where you see Lois and Clark and they're doing that interview thing, and that's been rumored for a long time. That was in the leaks, and that's not surprising if you've been following that. But it's just, I don't know, just something felt off about that. Now, the beginning of it wasn't too bad. It's when Clark Superman starts getting angry. It's like I don't know. I don't. Just it doesn't. That's not the vibe I was expecting necessarily, and it just feels sort of out of place, if you will. Like to me, when I think of Superman, and I know I've also behind the scenes. I don't think I've ever mentioned this. Wasn't a big fan of Man of Steel. I just know it's not the most popular thing to say. A lot of folks do love that movie. I understand that, but I'll be honest, it's not my favorite comic book movie. I kind of fell asleep when I first watched it in the theater because I thought it was kind of boring. But I'll give Henry Cavill his credit here. He sort of brought a sort of a commanding presence as Superman. It's not, jokey, nor was it like ultra serious. So it's definitely more of a commanding presence. And I do agree that's a better, I think, fit for Superman. But I don't know, man. Look, I'll give David Cornsweet a chance here. There's a lot of other parts of the trailer, like, for example, when he tells the kid, hey, buddy over here, that was fine. But it's just that beginning part, and I do agree with Robert Meyer Burnett and Josh over at Den of Nerds, that, I don't know, just that beginning interview part, just like, I don't know, he doesn't feel like he's in command. He just feels like he's just angry, being a dick. I don't know. That little part there didn't make any sense. The selfie thing, that's another thing. It's like, oh, James Gunn movie. Yep, that definitely fits the realm. So, yes, there's some good and some bad. Of course, been following the leaks. There's been a lot of good things, right? The fact that they're making the Kryptonians more imperialistic, a little bit different than the comics and previous versions. That's fine. That's actually kind of cool to see like a different take on that. But then you're getting like the super shit rumors about, Lex Luthor starting like a hit campaign on social media. That I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's really necessary. And then we have the other rumored stuff and the different plot leaks. And look, I want this movie to succeed. Again, I know there's been this argument about who's better, Fantastic Four or Superman. Both of them can be successful. I mentioned this back a couple months ago. I don't care about that. I want both of these to be successful. I'll see both of these in the theater. But I just wish that this movie is not Guardians of the Galaxy Superman. Again, I like the first Guardians film. The second one, I'll be honest, I think that's a horrible movie. Too jokey. I actually kind of agree with Christian Harloff on this, that it's just too jokey. And it's just like, I don't know. That second movie, I do not like. The first one, I really love. But I just really hope it's not Guardians 2. And if it really is, I'm just going to be, that'll be disappointing. It really would be, because I really hope that doesn't happen. And look, that's coming from someone who likes comedic stuff. Like, I don't mind, funny things, but just like Guardians 2 was just it may have just been an episode of Alf, like just a full-on sitcom, funny, a lot of laughs. It's like, okay, we get it, it's funny, but you don't have to go full into the comedy stuff. And I think with James Gunn, he sort of leans into that a little bit too much. And I think what I really would hope is it is in the vein of just Guardians 1, where yes, there's jokes, but there's also a lot of serious moments. And I guess in a sense, sort of like Peacemaker, especially the first season, which I know a lot of folks don't like that show. I thought it was actually quite good. But even with that, yeah, there was a lot of jokes in there, but still, it got serious at times, and I think that would be a nice mixture. But the vibe we're getting here is, at the moment, frankly, I just don't know. That's our problem, too, and that's something that Robert Meyer Burnett brought up yesterday on one of the shows he was on, is that we've gotten the first little trailer, and we got the big one. We really don't know what the story is, and I kind of agree with him. We just don't. We still live in mystery, and that's our problem too. It's just like we just really don't know what's really going, what the vibe is, and what's really happening. It's like, yeah, it's Lex Luthor versus Superman. That's like the classic matchup. And, that's fine, right? That's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, what's the other part here? And I know some of it too. If you listen to the leaks about, the evil Kryptonians and how they're more imperialistic. So unless they full out and say that in the trailers, then that'll probably make it'll at least give you a better sense of what's actually going on here. But that's a spoiler, I guess. But no one's really watching this, so I guess I can go ahead and say that. But yeah, the Superman trailer, mixed on it, but still, I'm like, I don't know. Again, I'm rooting for James Gunn. I'm rooting for DC to be successful. There's a lot of things they are doing well. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know what to feel about this. I don't know. Again, there's parts of it I do like. But then another part of me, it's like, man, if this really is, like we've been hearing from people like Jeff Snyder, how it's very much so Guardians of the Galaxy Superman, it's like, I don't know. I don't want that necessarily. I don't know if that really is something that I want, and especially if it's more Guardians 2, then that would be really that'd be really disappointing if that's the case. So hopefully, if it is like Guardians, it's more like Guardians 1 and not freaking Guardians 2. But anyway, get some more water here. Make sure the voice is still good. Then we'll move on to this other pretty significant story here. I don't think anyone's really talking about. So before we do that, again, as we sort of the show, again, we do this show twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Again, next week we may have to do this on Monday, or I will probably pre-record a show and then we'll an evergreen show. Then we'll I guess not really evergreens. We'll do our record projection, but we'll figure it out. I'll let you guys know by Sunday what our plans are. But yeah, next Tuesday we may not be able to get something out, a show live on Tuesdays. We may have to move it around a little bit, but which is fine. We can manage that. So I wanted to touch on this. This is something that's been sort of brewing underneath, or I guess whatever term you want to use, brewing, percolating underneath the surface. But this is something that Josh, Den of Nerds, brought up earlier on Twitter, and I didn't know this was out there. This is actually about a couple days old, and this is from TPP, That Park Place. This is an article that they have up, and it's about this sort of division at Lucasfilm. Now, of course, when Josh, Den of Nerds, did his big video on Star Wars before Celebration, he's sort of talking about all the news stuff and things that he was hearing about, like Ahsoka Season 2 and some of the announcements they're going to be making at Celebration, or the lack of new announcements, mostly just updating you on things that have already been announced. One of the things he brought up towards the end of the video was the sort of division in Lucasfilm of these two camps of, sort of infighting, right? Which is part of the reason why you're not getting any quote unquote, or I guess not quote unquote, but actual new things, like things that were not announced yet. I guess the only thing you got was the mall show, but that was rumored already from Josh already. So that wasn't, if you've been watched that video, that wasn't really necessarily new. But in this article that was linked here on his tweet that Josh was sort of retweeting, I guess, and the article on their tweet, That Park Place, they mentioned a article from their article, a podcast from Joanna Robinson. If you know who that is, she did the the Marvel Studios book, couple that were released a couple years ago. It's very fascinating. I haven't bought it before. I may buy it at some point, so I kind of want to read it. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but from what Joanna Robinson has reported, apparently there's been sort of hearing the same things that Josh over at Den of Nerds has heard. Now, of course, he hasn't streamed in a couple of days. He'll be streaming tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say about this. But in that article, in the video, I guess they linked, the podcast, that the way he's sort of describing, I guess I'll read his tweet, Josh's tweet here. I'm going to give him some credit. He says here, quote, Joanna Robinson has revealed that she has heard the same thing I have heard, that being Den of Nerds. Filoni is locking Star Wars down, and Andor got past him because of Kathleen Kennedy. Filoni doesn't like Andor and doesn't think it fits Star Wars. I feel how you feel, but my reporting has been correct. Again, end quote. That's Josh's tweet. Sort of again, reaffirming that yes, this is the same things he's been hearing, and he didn't. If I recall in that video, he didn't necessarily specifically mention what that division was. He just sort of glazed over it. But I think now it's open in the public. He was referring to now a division between Tony Gilroy, I guess him, Kathleen Kennedy, and Dave Filoni. And the crux of this, and of course with Andor wrapping up yesterday, and look, I'll be honest, I didn't watch the freaking show. Yes, he had the whole big situation with the little, I guess, controversy that popped up in the first few episodes. Now, I have seen clips of it on YouTube, and mainly the critic stuff. That's kind of a cool character, and it's unfortunately he's in a boring show. But this is part of the problem. This is the problem. The fact that there's two camps here. And whether or not you feel like one is better than the other, you think the way Tony Gilroy is doing things, sort of this mature, gritty, sort of like, HBO style TV show, like a TV show you would see on like ABC or NBC, like Law and Order or something like that. Do you want that, like this more mature Star Wars? Do you want Filoni doing more of what George is doing, sort of the mythical stuff, and still doing the Imperial stuff, but keeping things in a medium? And I think the bigger issue here, and I'll once again explain this, we did a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the whole Andor controversy in those first few episodes. Again, this sort of kind of like I'm repeating myself, but that's the issue. It's the fact that you're bringing in this mature tone that Star Wars, that's not what it is. Like Star Wars and the way George Lucas has explained it, it is a fairy tale for kids, and it's more or less open to all ages, right? It's not, making things exclusively for, adults or whatever. You're not like, I don't know, I guess you're not sort of segregating certain, parts of, I don't know, I guess the franchise to certain, well, maybe segregating is not the right word, but sort of boxing in, I guess, yeah, there we go, boxing in certain aspects of the franchise for certain groups. And he wants it to be his goal of it was to be for everyone. It was a fairy tale for children. It's sort of this non-mature sort of, I don't know, I guess high fantasy stuff. And that's what the whole purpose was of Star Wars. That's the reason why he sort of created it. And the in Filoni's camp, they're doing stuff that George wanted to do. He is going into more of the mythical stuff, and things are not necessarily tied to real life. And look, I know a lot of folks hate Ahsoka. I think the show's good. Yes, is it flawed? Yes. And hopefully season 2 will be a little better in some ways, but I still think the show's quite good. That show, and again, is very much so the essence of George and doing things, expanding the mythical side of things and going into the Force stuff and the Mortis gods, and things are actually kind of cool. But then, yeah, Andor, it's like they're doing boring Imperial stuff. Oh, Imperial guy shows up, a random officer. Oh, we're doing, political stuff. Like, just bringing, not even just that, but just bringing in, like, real-life things that have a lot of legal, I guess, substance in the real world, which happened in the first few episodes. It's like, that's not Star Wars for me. Now, if you were doing this for, like, an HBO show or a NBC TV show or NBC or ABC TV show, that's fine. That might be a good show. But for Star Wars and that vibe, it's pretty clear that most of the fans, the majority of the core fans, they don't like that. They're not going to stand for that. And it seems like from what Joanna Robinson's saying, and of course a lot of folks don't think she's a good source. Well, she damn is, and she was the first one that sort of got on top of the whole, reverting from Kang the Conqueror release for the Marvel stuff and going over to Doctor Doom. She was one of the few people that started reporting on that. A lot of folks gave her shit for that, but then now she's probably sat back during Comic-Con a couple years ago. It was like, joke's on you. But anyway, but now you have this camp. And now Filoni, who, based on her reporting, does not like what Gilroy's doing, also completely sort of kind of tarnishing his stuff by, retconning Rebels. And there was stuff that Gilroy mentioned last week, I believe, and he was saying, sort of degrading Star Wars Rebels. It's like, okay, yeah, well, I'm myself not a fan of it, but still, that's even that right there is sort of the signal of this infighting with Lucasfilm and this camp of more mature Star Wars stuff, bring in things that should not be introduced in the franchise. And then you have Filoni's camp, which is doing more of the mythical stuff and keeping it within the realm of George's stuff and sort of keeping in that lane. And look, I'm not against doing new stuff. It's the way people like Gilroy and the way they sort of do things, like, for example, like not doing Easter eggs and stuff like that, which, look, I'll be honest, that kind of, it doesn't seem like a big deal. It is a big deal. That's what Star Wars is. It's, connecting stuff. It's sort of like Marvel, too. Like Marvel, in terms of their movies, the same thing. It's like, part of it is the connecting stuff and having Easter eggs and things overlapping, but it's just, it doesn't surprise me, right? The fact that Filoni does not like Andor, and the fact that Gilroy basically gave Filoni the bird and said, well, fuck you, I'm going to do my own stuff, and you guys go screw around with your own stuff. And, even though Gilroy's doing a show that takes place during his show, Star Wars Rebels, but he's like, Filoni got shut out. That's what was being reported. He basically had no idea what was going on. And then Gilroy again is talking about, we were, unfortunately, we had to do, reference to Rebel stuff, but I really don't, in a sense, basically said I don't give a fuck about it, which I'm like, okay. But it's just, that is the problem. The problem is that there is division, and I think it really is tied to this Tony Gilroy, Kathleen Kennedy camp versus the Filoni stuff. And it's, look, I'm sick of it. I would just wish that this wasn't a problem, and I just wish that this infighting wouldn't be the case. But as a Star Wars fan, who I'm more or less, I don't know, I guess how would I say this? I guess hoping for the better of the brand, I guess. I don't know, that's the best way to put it. But I would much rather this not be the case. And I'll be honest, I'm more of a fan of the Filoni stuff, and hopefully, maybe his camp ends up winning out. And of course, Gilroy is, for all intents and purposes, at least done with Andor stuff. But I know, look, I guess I'll say this and I'll move on because now I'm just rambling. I understand folks like Andor. I get that. Look, I'm not shaming you for liking it. That's fine if you like it. No problem with that. But that's not for me. That's not. I agree with Josh over at Den of Nerds. That's not the Star Wars we prefer watching. We don't like, having, boring corporate meetings of the Imperial stuff like that's. I'll be honest. I just like that. That's boring. That's not fun. Again, I understand. Look, as much as I like Robert Meyer Burnett, I disagree with him about some of this takes by Andor. I just disagree on it. I understand where he's coming from with, yes, it does represent Star Wars maturing with the audience, but that's not the entire audience. Like, the audience is not 50 and 70-year-old farts who, hop on, Disney Plus like every other year or once a year and watch Andor because, it's mature and gritty. The majority of the fan base is like, mostly younger, and it's a bit more larger than that. And not to mention it's a show, by the way, in Andor that's not trending. That's not probably doing well in the ratings. And yes, it was trending yesterday, but even still, it's not doing well statistically. And then again, I just told you guys earlier, I wouldn't really necessarily pay attention to that. But if you're looking for this from a business standpoint, if you put it on your business cap, that is concerning. And I think that should be a red flag that's not working. And most of your core audience is rejecting that style. And they would much prefer the Filoni stuff. And while, yes, it's not been necessarily smooth, it's still more in line with George's stuff. You're not introducing, extremely controversial things in terms of like introducing real world legal issues. It's just like, I don't know, man. I also, going back to Josh's video back a month ago when he sort of got that information about the first 3 episodes controversy and saying, hopefully Dave, or him asking, why didn't Dave stop this? Well, it's obvious now because Garrett always said, fuck you. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to do my own stuff. And Filoni kind of became powerless, but then again, I guess the only criticism there, if that's the case, is like, well, why didn't Dave step up more? But I guess the only other argument there, I guess, is that Filoni is more of a company man, doesn't want to, ruffle feathers. But I do believe firmly in his mind, if I were to put Dave Filoni in front of me and I put a lie detector test on him, I would guarantee you he is not a fan of Tony Gilroy. I'll guarantee you that. And it'll be interesting to hear Josh's thoughts on this tomorrow on his stream. I'll be watching it like a hawk. But, I'm not surprised here that this is the case, and this is something that's been sort of bubbling underneath the surface. It sucks. It really does suck. And I don't know. In a sense, this is unfortunately part of the issue with Star Wars. It's just literal, even more division going on. But I don't know. I figured I'll get my thoughts on that. And it sucks. It really does suck. And then it doesn't have to be like this. It didn't have to be like this. But oh well. I guess we can do Buccaneers schedule, I guess, now. I'll get some more water here as we sort of chug along here. Tampa Bay schedule came out yesterday. A lot of it got leaked. There was a leak with the Rams game, which is on Sunday night. It's not going to be the Thanksgiving game. I know there's an issue of that. A lot of folks got confused. It's not. It's the Sunday night game before. So anyway, so that was a factor, if you will. But here's the schedule as it sets up. Of course, with Tampa, a lot of changes. We'll eventually do a record projection with them because now the schedule is released. But, of course, they have a lot of changes, new OC. Once again, a lot of new talent coming in with the draft. Becca Buka, new players on defense, or new pieces on defense through the draft. But the schedule here, how it breaks out. Back-to-back road games to start out. A couple years ago, they went to, what was it? 2023? Yeah, 2023 was the last time they went on the road to start out, which was Minnesota. So very similar to that, but it's back-to-back weeks. The first game at Raymond James will be on December 21st. So it goes in order here all the way. So it's Falcons the first game, Texans, both those on the road. Then you get 2 at home, Jets first and Eagles. The Houston game is on ABC and ESPN. So that's a Sunday night game. I believe that's a doubleheader. So I believe the ESPN Plus game is like a different game. So it'll be kind of similar, ironically, to the last time Tampa was on Monday Night Football. So they have that game. That's week 2. Again, week 3 and 4 at home. That's in order: Jets, Eagles. On the road at Seattle. And of course, this year is the year on the rotation for the NFC that it's the NFC West. And then for this year, for the AFC rotation, it's the AFC East. So every 4 years, again, that's you can sort of plan it out. So next year will be the AFC North. So Seattle on the road there. That's actually a CBS game. After that, home for the 49ers again. Yes, it's kind of strange we're playing the 49ers again for like the 5th straight year, but it's unfortunately because it's on the rotation this year organically, but also because of placements in the division. You have to play the best team in the other division, so that's why why Tampa's had to play the 49ers like every single year for the past like decade, or for this decade and going back to 2019. But it's the same thing too with the Lions, again with divisional placement. You play them again on the road again. That's on Monday Night Football again. Then you have at New Orleans, their first New Orleans game. And then you get your bye week again. Nice situation, kind of like last year. Very good spot there right before November. Patriots, again, you're playing the AFC East. So Patriots come to town at Buffalo. We'll just say that's my most concerning game on the schedule. I'm not looking forward to that game. Rams on the road on NBC. It's the only NBC game at the moment. More likely probably will be. That is, and then you get the Cardinals coming to town. Saints second game, Falcons second game on Thursday night. And so that's 2 straight years of Falcons game on Thursday night. So it'll be Chris and Kirk. Panthers, you actually play them the last 2 of the last 3 weeks. So you get the first Panthers games on the road. Then you go to the Dolphins for the rivalry game at Hard Rock. And then you get Panthers again on week 18. So as it lays out, sort of just look at it from, I guess early on, because we'll do a proper breakdown of this and projection. Not as bad as last year, definitely a little bit more lighter, but still a lot of difficult games. I think the Eagles game scares me. The Bills game definitely scares me. And trying to think, I guess, the Rams game is probably one of them. The Texans game is number 1. That is, I'm not really looking forward to. And then I guess the Detroit game is one I'm not looking forward to. It's definitely going to be a revenge game for Detroit. So a decent enough breakdown. I think that the divisional games, I think, are definitely the more easier games, as it's in the weakest division of all football. Your non-divisional games are unfortunately going to be pretty tough, much like last year. So, I mean, not necessarily that tough. You don't have Kansas City. You don't have to play them top of you already playing this year. So it is a little more lighter. It's more manageable. Again, I like what the bye week is, sort of sandwich in the middle, if you will, so that's good. I'm really hoping, was hoping it wasn't going to be like a week 5 bye week. That sucks. But it's nice to have in the middle again like last year. So a good enough schedule against some easy teams. I think the easiest team on here is probably the Patriots, I would imagine. So probably them, Panthers probably. But also not too difficult. I think the most difficult game in terms of travel is definitely Buffalo, and I think Seattle. Those are the 2, I guess, travel games in terms of like environment, weather I'm more concerned about. But not too bad. Not a bad schedule. So excited to get that out. Hopefully I can get to a Bucs game this year. We'll see. Was able to get to the go to the Saints game. I guess we'll see how it works out with the way the season plays out. So hopefully I can watch him this year, but it's not a guarantee. We'll see, but I'll let you guys know if I do. But Bucs schedule came out again. I feel pretty good about it, if you will. No real concerns. So that's kind of it for the main show. Now we'll get into Q&A. Some more water here. Of course, from the past couple weeks, or really months, I've been doing Q&A towards the end of the show, sort of something to have sort of fill up some time, if you will, especially around this time of the year. Of course, once football season starts, we'll probably do less of these, but who knows. First question here, why is the Ironheart trailer so divisive? So this is another trailer that came out, sort of got sandwiched in between the Superman trailer. I watched the Ironheart trailer. I mean, it's whatever. It's kind of what I expected. It's a Disney Plus show. It's going to look a little bit cheaper than the movie. I will say the visual effects for the actual Ironheart suit doesn't look too bad. I'll give them credit on that. It doesn't look too bad, but still, I just didn't really do anything for me. I'm not interested in it. And why is it being this divisive? There's multiple reasons. Some of it's politically fueled. Some of it is just the typical trolls and haters. And I think some of it, too, is also being mixed in. People like me and Josh over at Den of Nerds just are, I think, frankly, just sick and tired of these half-baked Disney Plus shows. And, of course, this one's been around. It's been done film. It's been wrapped up, filmed, and ready to go for like 2 years. And I know a lot of folks are saying, oh, Marvel's not trying to hide it. Well, they are trying to hide it. They literally have the shortest window for releasing a trailer and when a show coming out ever. And that's, to me, a clear sign that they are not confident in the show whatsoever. At least from what I'm hearing, it's not that really that good. Will it have connections to Mephisto? Will Sacha Baron Cohen, Borat, and also King Julian from Madagascar? Is he going to be Mephisto? Was he cut out of the show? There's been a lot of, I guess, conflicting stuff about that. We'll see. But yeah, I guess visually it looked fine, but still, it's a Disney Plus show, and it's a Disney Plus Marvel show. Those have not had the best track record. I mean, to an interesting point here, I think most of these Star Wars shows I've liked a lot better than the Marvel shows, and even though it's not really saying much. But yeah, Ironheart, whatever. I probably won't watch it. Whatever. I mean, I guess we have Fantastic Four to look forward to, I guess, the rest of the year. Well, yeah, Wonder Man coming out. See, our next question. How likely would it be for Tulane to join the Big Ten in the future? So this is actually kind of a question I sort of spun off of Cover 3. Those guys over there, like Chip Patterson, Bud Elliott, Danny, all of them. Sort of something that got brought up, I think, on Wednesday about Tulane potentially, joining the Big Ten, and a hypothetical scenario of, like, the Big Ten trying to, get their footprint in the Louisiana area, because at the moment, LSU is the only major power team from Louisiana. There's no other Louisiana team. All the other Louisiana teams are currently in the G5. I think if you look at it from the Big Ten, if they were to do this in the future, which I think they might. I think the round of conference expansion, I do believe Tulane could be a very attractive spot. Again, if you're going through the the whole, the old TV box, I guess, way of doing things right. You get into the Louisiana market, a lot of viewership from there. Again, you're stepping into a really good recruiting bed. That would be pretty attractive to get Tulane. Again, Tulane's a lot of good things, with, who's their coach before John Sturmell? Why am I forgetting his name again? Yeah, Willie Fritz. Yeah, so when Willie Fritz was there, they were pretty good for a number of years, for a lot of years. And of course, now John Summerall, they've been sort of one of the better G5 teams, and certainly they are pretty attractive. So, yeah, them going to the Big Ten, especially in this next round of conference realignment, especially when the ACC begins to break apart, whenever that happens, which will be probably soon. By the way, ACC spring meetings is happening in Jacksonville. I am not far from where I am. But yeah, Tulane going to the Big Ten, that wouldn't surprise me. And I think it'll be, again, for going the TV box route. Yeah, that would be, again, you're adding in the Louisiana, New Orleans TV market. You're having that Louisiana footprint, getting a lot of talent from there. You have another competitor for LSU, at least in terms of, recruiting and resources. And you're seeing this a lot with a lot of these teams, like, Houston, SMU going to the ACC. A lot of these, former G5 is going up. While, yes, the success has not been there necessarily, we are seeing some of it with SMU and, the influx of money and things like that. So you could see that for a Tulane going to the Big Ten. Wouldn't surprise me. Though, yes, it would be weird, and yes, it would, without a doubt, ruin even more the geography of the college football. But then again, geography doesn't exist anymore. Last question here, and then we'll get out of here. What do you make of the proposed bill in Ohio that is sort of banning big noon kickoffs? So this is something that we talked about on Tuesday, this sort of big noon controversy. Now it's getting legal. Apparently, Ohio State, Ohio representative, the state of Ohio representative, is aiming to legislate big noon kickoff. And of course, this is stemming from the announcement of Texas and Ohio State being on Fox, which, although it's not been confirmed to be a big noon kickoff game, it kind of is, because that's Fox's that's your window now. At least for their prime game is going to be at noon. That's always going to be that. It's not going to change. It has been that for the past 7 years. Like I mentioned on Tuesday, you can be mad about it. You can be, stomp around and break some stuff and whatever. I get that. I'm mad too. I don't want this game to be at noon and 9 o'clock on the West Coast. But unfortunately, again, given Fox and their TV market deal, or their TV deal with the Big Ten, that's the way it's going to have to be for the foreseeable future. And even with this whole legislation thing, is it going to change the thing? Probably not. I'm assuming this will probably get shut down in court or wherever this is going to go pretty quickly. Probably won't do anything. Of course, the Fox and the Big Ten legal. I don't know. I would imagine this is nothing real serious. I think if anything, this is just showing more anger from a lot of folks who are Ohio State fans, because, and if you're a Texas fan, that's not a big deal, right? Because thankfully you're in the SEC and you'll have, the SEC on ABC every single day, which is either 3:30 or a primetime game at 7 o'clock. So for you as Texas fans, not a problem. But for Michigan, well, I guess maybe for if you're a Michigan fan, but I guess next year when Oklahoma comes to town, I think. But either way, if you're, I guess Michigan fan, Ohio State fan, you're still mad. I mean, you're sure you're jealous that all of your big games at home for your Big Ten schools, or I guess for your schools, right? If you're a Michigan fan, all of your home Big Ten games or your prime Big Ten game, you're going to be on Fox because that's just the way the TV deals work. And Fox has the leeway being the first network to get the first dibs on drafting games. And unfortunately for CBS and NBC, there's nothing you can do about it. They have to get the leftovers. And I guess the only way you can't get Big Noon for you is unless you go to the West Coast, but you have to lose a home game. So, yes, it sucks. Like I mentioned on Tuesday, it sucks. There's nothing you can do about it. Yes, you can cry and stomp your feet and, break your TV or whatever, or smash your phone. But even with all this stuff and when I don't know. I don't think anything will come out of this. If it does happen, I'll be kind of stunned if it does, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. And, it's something we're monitoring. But like I mentioned on Tuesday, it is what it is, unfortunately, because of the rules and stuff. This is what Fox wants, and they want to have a big game on the noon window. And again, I think from a daily layout situation, right, with having a big game at noon with Fox and having the ABC game on at 3:30 and having the Saturday Night Football game, whether it's SEC or not, or I guess it would be SEC mainly because that's what ESPN and Disney want. It's a good slate, right? If it's a good layout, if you will. But if you're a fan, if you're Ohio State and Texas, I get it. Or for mainly Ohio State, yeah, you want Ohio State to be hosting Texas that night and wearing the black jerseys and stuff like that and having a blackout. Under the current rules and TV deals, you can't do that, unfortunately, and will not be the case going forward. So, look, it sucks, and I agree with you, but there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing I can do about it. So, and there's nothing I can do about it in the show. So, we'll be back probably on Monday. If not, we'll have something pre-recorded on for Tuesday to be released. Then we'll be back, same as usual, Thursday. So, enjoy your weekend. It's going to be hot for most of you in the Southeast, especially where I'm at, near 100 temperatures. So, until we meet again, take care, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you guys sometime early next week, and definitely on Thursday. But, I'll let you guys know. So, until then, take care, and we'll see you on the next show.